Hey everyone, I'm Matt with Bardic Inspiration, and I decided to try something a little fun today. I've got 20 miniatures of varying shapes and sizes, all from the Nolzur's mini collection. This is more or less the last group of miniatures standing in my way before I can finally start painting my Warhammer armies. The last few videos we've done have been using Citadel's contrast color paints, and I've loved how much they've sped up the process of painting. So I want to put them to the true test of speed.
Yo, you wanna see some real speed, bitch?
I'm gonna put 1 hour on the clock and see how much I can get accomplished. Now, since these are Nolzur's minis, I'm not overly concerned with how great they look, but since I'm me, I still want them to look as good as I can possibly make them. So that's the plan. Let's put an hour on the clock and let's get started. My plan was to take the 11 contrast paints that I have and start picking out areas on each miniature where I want to use that color. This will help me save more time overall since I won't be intentionally switching between colors and needing to clean off my brushes each time. The only exception I'll be making is for the metallic paints that I'll be using on the miniatures, but I'm going to save those bits for the end. I'm going to be starting with the more dominant colors in my current pool, which will determine the overall scheme for the model as I dive deeper into my paint. Depending on how long each step takes me, I may try mixing some colors together and try to expand the range of these 11 paints. But I am under a time constraint, so we'll see where that goes. After the hour was up, I had nearly finished the primary color for each model. I admit I was expecting to be a bit further along than this after 60 minutes, but I typically never paint more than a single miniature at a time, so I'm sure with some practice I could speed this process up. However, I do think the clock started to get at me a little bit. I finished the last miniature after about 5 hours of work, which averages out to roughly 15 minutes per miniature. Looking closer at all of them, there are definitely some that I like better than others, but I'm kind of disappointed with the overall result. But like I said, there are definitely some that stand out above the rest, so we're going to take a look at each of these miniatures individually, starting with my least favorite and working our way up to what I think was my best work. The Red Dragonborn model, in my eyes, has nothing too exciting going on with it. I realized that I was copying a paint scheme that I had used on a different model a couple months ago, and I ran into the same issue, surprise, surprise. The metallic colors are pretty bland, and the scales do not pop the way that I'd like them to. I could go through and highlight the model, but I wanted to represent these in a truer fashion to contrast paints. I don't hate the Blood Angels red, but I definitely won't be using it to paint dragon scales anymore. I'm grouping these four together since they're all the same size and I'm equally unsatisfied with the end result. Small miniatures can be hard to paint and you can really tell how rushed these models were. I went through and shaded the blue guy's robes, which makes it my favorite of this group, but not by much. The faces on these models have great detail for how small they are, but my work on them didn't really utilize it well. By rushing through these little guys, I skipped over the good qualities that these miniatures possess. This dwarf suffers from the same issue I had with the Dragonborn. Nothing too exciting going on with the paint job. Going back through it, I would have picked a different primary color. I'm not thrilled with the shyish purple contrast paint. It feels more like a base coat and less like a contrast paint. By the time I had gotten to all the extra bits of the model, I just wanted to be done with it. I don't really know what these little flag-like things are on his back, so I just painted them all in my metallics phase. There aren't many visible mistakes on this mini, but again, there's nothing I'm excited about with the finished product. I wanted to like this model a lot, but it takes a lot of hits based on how sloppy some of the paint job was. I like this shade of green, and I apply 2 coats pretty much any time I use it. It's vibrant, colorful, but I got some of the paint on the forehead of the mini and there was just no coming back from it, unless I wanted to take the extra time to completely repaint the miniature. There are some other places where I got the green paint on unwanted areas, which really detracts from the mini in my opinion. Here's another usage of the shyish purple. I don't think it looks horrible, but there's not as much pop as I'd like from it, even when I'm using the slap chop technique coined by the Honest Wargamer. Check out some of our other videos if you want to see more about that. I decided to go for a dark skin tone on this mini, and I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Skin is one of the areas on the model that stresses me out, and I like how easy Goleman flesh and Dark Oath flesh make painting those areas. I'd hope that using wildwood in this case would work similarly, but there's probably a darker flesh tone in the contrast line that will work out better for this. Here's an elven warrior, maybe even a paladin or cleric, that I thought turned out fine. It's mostly metallic paint, and I haven't tried to do anything too fancy with metallics yet, so it stays in the fine category. There's a video from Miniac on using metallic paint in a non-metallic metal style that I really liked, so I'm thinking of giving that a shot on a future miniature. But on this miniature, I like the vibrancy of the Talisar blue, and I darken the cloak with a purple shade color. This Medusa model is a strange one to me. I don't really picture a Medusa wearing armor and swinging a weapon since they have a natural armor class in 5th edition D&D, but they do have a short sword as part of their kit, so I guess having a warhammer or pick makes sense. I wanted to use some lighter colors for the cloth material, but the details were lost on the leather bits. I generally like the look of snakebite leather, but in this case I think rushing through the paint job really held it back. This is actually a Yuan-Ti miniature, so I wanted to incorporate my Warp Lightning contrast colors. I like the different colors on the model, but it definitely benefits from the 5-foot rule. It looks better from a distance. Up close you can't really pick out details about the miniature. There are also some areas with metallic paint on them, and they don't really stand out. So here we are with a mostly fleshed-toned mini. It seems like a monk-type fighter to me, so I wanted to make the skin tone and robes the most vibrant colors on the model. Once again, Shyish Purple just was not the answer. But I do like the way the flesh tone looks, even if it's a little too close in color to the leather strap around his body. Aside from that, there's really not much else going on with the mini. Here's a pretty interesting mini visibly. The leather bits look great in my eyes, and I'm not too disappointed with the purple long coat on the model. I like working with these clear plastic bits on Nolzur minis, but fire is a difficult one for me. I decided to make it look a bit more magical by using the Blood Angel's red and then a purple shade color to give it a bit of a darker look, while preserving the clear nature of the plastic. Not exactly the end result that I was going for, but I have definitely seen worse. Here's another Yuan-Ti model. I like that the spear has a snake wrapping around it, and if I'd taken more time with each of these minis, I'd have worked to make that bit pop even more. Instead, I used the Warp Lightning on the snake bits and slapped more Cursed Blade on the metallic bits. I don't hate the end result, but I definitely could have made certain parts of the model stand out a bit more. So here's the beginning of the models that I actually like. I pictured this one as a golden dragonborn druid or cleric casting some sort of defensive spell. A druid probably wouldn't wear metal in their equipment, but their primary armor is that scaled tunic. The only issue I really have with the mini is on its back, where his crossbow and arrows sit. They blend a bit too much into the mini, making the backside a bit underwhelming, but I do like the front of the model. This model is mostly 2 different colors, and we see the return of Shyish Purple. I really wanted to give this paint a chance, guys, but I do like the simplicity of this one. Oftentimes, I'll get bogged down on trying to make each detailed item on a mini use a different color or shade, and I didn't have to do that with this one. He's not wearing much, and that definitely played a big role in how good I think this one looks. The blue spell effect could use a bit of work, but I'm fine with where this ended up. These 2 models are primarily metallic paints again, and both use the blue cloth that the previous miniature did. I imagine these guys as a holy trio of adventurers in service to some deity trying to do some good in the world. The shields are a huge eye-catcher for me on these models, and I really like the chest piece of the mini with the blue scaled tabard. I could see one of these guys being used as a player character and not just an NPC. The second wizard model has a lot more going on with it than the previous one. I like the contrast of the red on his robes and the blue magical effect coming from his staff. It almost seems like the more simple I try to do these models, the more I end up liking them. When there's too much going on, there ends up being nothing to look at. Maybe Syndrome was right.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
And here is our final miniature. I actually love the way this one turned out. There's a single blemish on the Medusa's right knee, but there's more distinction between her robes and her skin tone than I expected there to be. I like the golden headpiece sitting in front of her snake hair. She's got a spear, but that isn't the focus of the model. The skin tone had to be well done, and I'm pleased with the end result. I think it looks pretty good both up close and from a distance, and I can't wait to have this model used in a D&D campaign. I've played since the release of 5th edition, and we've still never fought one. So, there's the final result. Am I impressed overall with the lot? No, not exactly. I've done better work, and I typically don't like painting Nolzur minis. Their bigger minis, like the Young Dragons, are much more fun for me to paint, but I don't want to harp too much on these miniatures. They're like $5 a pack, and they actually represent real monsters in the monster manual. There's pros and cons, but I am excited to just be done with this batch of miniatures. I put them off for a long time because I just wasn't excited to paint them. And now that they're done, very little stands in my way of actually painting a Warhammer army. Hi, cat. I've prepped my next miniature so you guys can see me paint the terrifying Lich Asirakh. I've had the model for a long time, so it's finally next up on the chopping block. Before I go, I did want to showcase 2 other miniatures I painted off camera. I bought both of these from Etsy, and I have plans to use them eventually in the D&D game that I run. I'm pretty happy with the quality of the models, so my advice is to explore different Etsy shops and find crazy and unique models that you would feel excited to paint. And if you need more practice, well, Nolzur minis are the cheap way to do so. Maybe you can learn from this video and experiment with your own batch of 20 assorted models to develop your painting skills. Remember that not everything is going to be a home run, especially early on in the hobby. It takes time and practice, but I promise you, you can paint something that you'll be proud of. Try something new, have fun, and until next time, take care.